Have you ever wondered how educators and community members can support immigrant families, undocumented youth, and individuals with DACA? That's exactly what this podcast is going to explore. Join us to learn more about these topics, listen to our guest stories, and explore resources to support students and their family. I'm your host, Dr. Gerardo Mancilla. I immigrated to the United States at a young age and am currently working as an associate professor of education. This is the Educators and Immigration Podcast. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Educators and Immigration. I'm your host, Dr. Gerardo Mancilla. In our last episode, we talked to 3 participants of the Summer 2023 MISOL program. Today, we'll have the opportunity to talk to 2 additional participants about their experiences and returning to Mexico. For this cohort, we had 17 participants who had the opportunity to travel to Mexico with the MISOL program and then be able to return with Advance Parole. Irma and Smiley, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having us here.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much for being on the show. One of the first things that we ask all of our guests is thinking about would you like to introduce yourself and what you would like to share with the audience. So Irma, maybe we could start with you and telling us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I'm Irma. I came here to the U.S. when I was close to 9 years old. So it's been, I've been here for 25 years. So most of my life here. And I currently work for a nonprofit here in Madison, where in some way has kind of helped me reconnect with my roots and who I am as a, Latina. And yeah.
Thank you so much for introducing yourself. Smiley, would you introduce yourself as well for the audience?
Yes, my name is Smiley Nunez. I came to the U.S. when I was 7, and I've been here for the past 26 years, and I finally was able to return home.
And that's one of the things we'll be talking about with the program MISOL, having the opportunity to go back to Mexico and kind of talking about what that was like. I know that in our last episode, we had 3 of the participants kind of share their story. Did you all have a chance to listen to those stories yet?
I did, yes. I listened to that episode last night, so.
Yeah, I heard it when you sent out
the link.
The link, yeah.
Did it seem like a lot of the stories that they were sharing resonated with you all?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
So I'm going to ask you similar questions to what we did with our previous podcast. The first one is, can you talk to us a little bit about the process of deciding to apply for the program? Advance Parole is something that in Wisconsin, from my perspective, it wasn't as well known yet. And so MISOL, that you were part of the second cohort. Can you talk a little bit about what that process was like for you to apply? Smiley, I don't know if we could start with you for this one.
Sure. Well, for me, it all began at 4:20 in the morning, getting ready for work. I was about to hop in the shower, and I saw this email that came through that said, a love letter for a DACA recipient, something like that. I was like, a love letter? I mean, it's going to be like a cute poem or something. And then I started reading it, and I think I was maybe like 3 days before the deadline. And I'm like, this can't be real. I was like, oh my God, I'm going to submit the application right there and then. So I knew Jasenia from her assisting me with my DACA renewal many years before interacting with her again. And after I submit the application, I send her a message and I said, hey, it's like, are you still involved with DACA? And she's like, yeah, what's up? How can I help you? And I said, hey, I just discovered this program, it's called MISOL, and I'm really interested in this, but, I need more information. You think you can help me with it? And she's like, I'm a co-founder to this program. I was like, no way. And I was like, you have made the dream come true. Like, your vision is what many of us been hoping for so long, And I just kind of connected with her, and I was like, I'm just so happy you guys have this vision and put it in place. Whether I get chosen or not, you are changing the lives of so many of us. And sure enough, later within that week, I did receive my acceptance letter, which was very emotional for me. I didn't share it with my family. Nobody knew. I only shared it with my mom. I think for me, I kept it a secret because I was afraid of for not to go through. And then, I told everybody, I'm going to Mexico. And, at the end, I don't go through. So I feel like a lot of us can relate in that. We had so many promises for dreamers and nothing has really worked for us. So I'm just like, I'm not saying anything, I'm just going to put it in like God's hand. if it's meant to be, it's meant to be. I'll be down there in August. If not, nobody knew. So yeah, that was a very emotional roller coaster for me to just keep that to myself, be really excited, but not being able to share other than with the people I was starting to meet for the program. So that was my journey applying for MISOL program.
Thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah.
And I appreciate you also talking about this idea of living like in limbo, of like not knowing because of the constant changes in immigration that have happened. But even within our application process too, y'all were selected very early on. AP usually takes about 4 to 6 months. And so even when we submitted the applications, it was still that waiting.
Yeah.
And still waiting and until like it finally got approved. But that unknown and that uncertainty that you talked about, that I think is important.
Yeah, I think it didn't really set in until you guys said, like, oh, she's approved, she got her AP. And I'm just like, oh my God, this is it. Like, it's really happening. That's when it started to, like, process. But it didn't feel real until I got in the plane. That's when I'm like, oh my God, it's actually happening.
And I think that was something that we noticed from several participants, that even after they got the AP approval, they were like, it doesn't feel real yet until I'm about to leave or until I actually land in Mexico. Mm-hmm. And you're coming out of the airport and the first thing you see is the air hitting you and remembering that feeling as well.
I think for me it was once the plane started landing in Mexico City, I just had like this overwhelm of emotion and I just like started crying, because it was like, oh my God, I'm here. I made it to my homeland. And, I look around, my mom's next to me, and she's crying because she's seeing me crying. It was just very beautiful, It was like, I'm glad I was able to also have her by my side to be able to share this experience with her. It was emotional for sure.
And I want to come back to the idea of not letting anybody know beforehand. And I know we'll have a couple of questions about that down the line, but that's something else that I would like to come back to as well.
Okay.
Irma, what about for yourself? How was it to even make the decision to apply and to be able to take the plunge and actually go through the program?
Yeah, I would say before I give you my answer, just listening to Smiley is like, le estoy reviviendo, and I can feel it. I know, yeah. I guess for me, I didn't hear about the love letter, so I missed the memo. How I found out is because I started working for Centro, where I work right now, and in one of the huddle meetings that we had, a coworker mentioned about going to Mexico, and she mentioned MISOL, and I connected with her like, oh, you're going to Mexico, you have that guy, and she talked to me about the program. At that time, I didn't know if it was going to be reopened, if another cohort was going to have a chance to go. So I waited, patiently waiting for that, memo or that poster saying that there was another cohort. However, like in the past, I had explored options about wanting to go back to Mexico, but there was really no options for me at that time because other circumstances. But when MISOL came and I applied for it, it was like, Smiley says, it didn't kick in until I actually landed in Mexico. And really what made me apply to the program was that I wanted to reconnect not just with my hometown, but also with my dad in this case, right, who I hadn't seen in 25 years. From the beginning, when I, started exploring that option in the application process, I told him, he was the only one he knew about it, that I was going to go to Mexico. And I remember him calling me once and saying, oh, so you come tomorrow? I'm like, no, it's not until August. So I think he was just so excited that it didn't click in his head that it was still a month away, because he was just hoping for me to connect with him again in Mexico. But that was really what motivated me, wanting to see him again. I mean, I would talk to him, I would see him via the camera, but it was not the same. And like Smiley says, when I got there, started bawling. And I think for me, it was a little different because I had talked to one of my aunts previously, and she was the one who picked me up. And it was just like, I lost myself, started crying. I couldn't control my emotions. I couldn't talk because of how happy I was. And yeah, I mean, that's really what got me into making that decision to apply and taking the risk, right? Because I would hear, oh, if you apply, you have a higher chance that they won't let you back in. And what happens if you have your children, you can't come back. I guess in some way I took the risk of going and, como dicen, darlo todo y ver qué pasaba. Pero yeah, it was definitely worth it.
The coworker that you mentioned, I believe she was part of the first cohort.
She was part of the first one,
and so did that kind of make you feel more at ease, knowing that she had gone through the same program and had done the same experience?
Yeah. I mean, even that, I was still scared. I'm not going to say that I wasn't scared. And just thinking about, because I would hear a lot about, el cuartito. I was like, okay, what is el cuartito?
Everybody says that.
Yeah. So that like, it made me feel really scared. But knowing that in this case, my coworker had come back and other people that I knew that had also used Advance Parole, and you just had to take the risk. Yeah.
And then the other part of it is, as a community, we hear about the possible risk and we hear about how to be cautious about it too. And so one of the things that we do with MISOL is have you all meet with lawyers ahead of time. The Community Law Immigration Clinic usually has the lawyers that can volunteer. And again, shout out to them for all the support that they do to make sure we could kind of go through and review each of the cases to make sure we limit those risks and we have that as much of that covered before we come back.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, that really actually helped. At least when I met with her and she talked about the options and what that could look like. So it did help in, making the final decision of going. Yeah. And
you also mentioned, similar to Smiley, the fact of not telling other people ahead. Mm-hmm. Was it for the same kind of reasons of the uncertainty, or was it just something else?
No, for me, it was more the fact that I had not connected with other family members and there was really no form of communication. So I didn't really want to involve them in that. But it was more related to that. I didn't want them to know, just because I wanted to keep it not a secret, but just confidential in the way that I wanted to be in the process by myself and explore that. Yeah.
And that's the other part too, that all the participants are going through the same process at the same time. So it's also ability to be in community with others who are experiencing the same things as well.
Yeah.
The first part of the program dealt with ethnographic research, where you had the opportunity to travel and be with family, maybe travel around Mexico, and then being able to reconnect with family members. Can you talk a little bit about what that experience was like for you before we started the program with the UNAM? What happened for you and what did you get a chance to do?
Yeah, so for me, I knew that I wanted to go back to Torreon, which is where I'm from. I got there. I remember, when the plane landed and I landed in Mexico City, and then I had to take another plane to get to Torreon. So when I got off the plane, nothing wrong with the smell, but the smell, the breeze, the air was way different. I would say the air made me feel like at home in some way. From there, I went to Torreon and I was there for a week and a half where, I spent most of the time with my dad. Torreon is a very dry, hot state. So he had me walking the whole time I was there. So parecía ¿cómo se le llama? Unos chiles esos que están bien rojos de los cachetes. The whole time we were walking. And, he's the person who likes to walk. We would get in an Uber and he would no, let's just stop here and let's keep walking. So although it was very hot, I enjoyed just the fact that I was walking with him and reconnecting with him. I spent days too with family members on his side. So a couple uncles and aunts. To be honest, I spent most of the time just, chatting with him and going to places that he would take me when I was little. He took me to the zoo in Mexico. En Mexico le dicen el bosque in Torreon. Mm-hmm. He took me there and he had me go through I remember the playground exactly. It was still looking the same. There was a huge slide that looked like a dinosaur. And I got on it. I remember getting on there when I was little. I just enjoyed every part of it, the time that I spent with him. After that, I had the chance to go to San Miguel de Allende by myself. So that was amazing. I spent in San Miguel de Allende, a week and a couple days. And just being there by myself, relaxing. It was just an amazing experience and getting to know the town. I went to León by myself. I felt like I was at home.
Wow.
I would talk to my mom and she's like, you're by yourself? I was like, yeah. And I would get on the Uber by myself. I even took the bus to the Guanajuato from San Miguel by myself. I was scared, but I knew I had to take the risk and just explore by myself.
As you talk about traveling by yourself in Mexico, did you have conversations about how to take there's different companies for the buses and different stations? Did you talk to somebody about how to navigate that whole transportation?
Not really. No, not really. I think what helped me was just going on. I looked on YouTube. I follow a page on Facebook that is called Dreamers Together. So I got a lot of that information from there. And just hearing other people's stories of how it was for them, traveling by themselves. I made sure to schedule the bus trips ahead of time so that I, knew exactly There was a couple Ubers who gave me some tips when I got on the Ubers, especially when I landed in Mexico City. I got on one of the Ubers and he right away was like, "You're not from here." I'm like, "I'm from here." I was
They
like,
know
"I'm from
somehow.
here."
They know, they know.
So he gave me the best tip ever. He said not to eat street tacos that are super cheap because most likely it's not going to be real meat, which I remember the tacos we ate in Mexico City. They
were like 45 pesos
Yeah.
for like five tacos.
Yeah. So that tip didn't work. But then he also mentioned that if I was going to take an Uber or a taxi to ensure that I had done my research, right? So like the pink taxis that I wouldn't write those. And I didn't, just because sometimes you can get not real taxi drivers. But yeah, I think I did my own research to be able to maintain myself safe.
And then the other part of it that you mentioned was feeling at home and feeling free and feeling like you could go anywhere in Mexico and explore it.
Yeah. I think the time that I was there by myself, I could just feel it. You hear a lot of things about, it's not that safe. You got to be cautious. But I would say the whole time I was there, I felt safe. I didn't see anything that made me feel that something was going to happen. I just felt safe. I felt like I was at home. Yeah, I don't know if it was because I was reconnecting with, Mexico and like just seeing the food and the people. I know in San Miguel, I went to the market and I bought higos, guayabas. It was just amazing. Like, yeah, it was a very unique, unforgettable experience.
Thank you. And thank you so much for sharing about that traveling part of it, as well as being with your family and being able to reconnect. Again, something like walking that might seem simple, but it's so meaningful because of the reliving and being in the moment with people as well. So thank you for sharing all that. Of course. Smiley, what about yourself? You talked about getting picked up at the airport and having a sense of emotion that was coming over you. As you think about the rest of your trip, like what are some of the things that you did and maybe reconnecting with family?
Yeah, well, the family knew my mom was going to Mexico. It was just my mom would be going to Mexico, and we had one of my cousins pick her up. So when he was getting ready to pick her up, I hid behind a pillar, and here's my mom with, like, I kid you not, we had like 9 luggages. Because I'm like, I'm going, I got to take gifts for the family. So we had like 9 maletas, and my cousin pulls up and is like, man, why all these maletas here? And while he's talking to my mom, I peek out through the pillar, and he gets scared. Like, he's like, oh, my God, and I'm just like, hey, and it was very emotional to see him because I haven't seen him, I don't know, I was maybe 11, 12 years old since I last saw my cousin. So, he was very shocked that I was there, and he's like, how did this happen, And I think the first thought that they think is, you got deported, because you never talk about, hey, I got papers or something like that. So he picked us up. We load up the van. We're driving off from the airport, and I'm just starting to see, like, the streets smell like the Mexican smell, how, I don't know, for me, it, like, hit me. It's hard to explain it, but just the smell, it did bring a sense of, like, wow, I'm home, You recognize that smell from when you were a kid, that, like, it was just in the back of your head. So, like, I was very emotional. So as soon as we got off, into the road, I don't know where, I started seeing signs, Texcoco over here, and, like...
El Zócalo,
Xochimilco. And you're used to reading the signs out here in English and being able to see, like, Mexican signs. And the first thing I saw getting off of the airport, somebody got hit by a car, like a motorcycle got hit. So that was the first thing I got to experience, like an accident right in front of us. So that was kind of downfall. But, we show up. I think we got there like 5 in the morning. It was pretty early, so my family was still sleeping. So my cousin, we get there. I kind of hid on the entryway to wake up my aunt. She's like a second mother to me, she's my mom's sister. So he was like, okay, I'll go wake her up. He was like, ándale, ma, like, ya llegó mi tía, ve a hacer el café. And it's like, okay, I voy. So here she's coming in her bata, just waking up and stuff like that. And I walk in and I surprise her, and she's like, I thought I was going to give her a heart attack, to be honest. She's just like, oh my God, in plain shock. She could not believe I was there. It was very emotional again. We're all crying. And we're here. They can't believe it. So it was beautiful. And, once you arrive, everybody wants to announce it. And I'm like, nobody can say anything, until there was certain people I needed to see before I announced that I was down there. And so, yeah, we went down the line. And that day, we got there really early. So we took a nap. And then I woke up and they're like, it's Tianguis Day. So let's go to the Tianguis. I'm like, I'm all in. And like you said, everything is walking down there, It's like, well, hop in the car, no, we're walking, and you got your little carrito and stuff. I was so geeked. I was carrying that thing the whole time. I was like, everybody just loading up fruit. It was an awesome experience going through the tianguis, seeing all these different merchants and all the stuff they sell. I got to try jicama with like some spices.
Jícama preparada.
Yeah. Oh my God. That was the first thing I got that I saw. And I was like, I'm in. So that was my first experience, the tianguis. It was nice.
So just the experience you've kind of shared about this idea of they knew your mom was coming, but not you.
Yeah.
And so just being able to surprise them at that point. As you think about all the other activities that you did, you mentioned the food, the fresh fruit that is all around and they're always selling it. Are there other memorable experiences that you had or other things that stand out as really meaningful and powerful experiences?
Yeah, so one thing that caught my eye from the beginning, and I was shocked by it, was like when you go to a restaurant and you're eating, like we could be eating right now, here comes a person and they all go like, provecho.
Provecho.
And I'm just like, the first time I heard that, I was like, oh, you know them? Yeah, and they're like, oh no, this is very common. And yeah, I started noticing that, like, wow, like, that's just beautiful. And, like, I really appreciated that because you go to any restaurant here, you eat, nobody says anything to you. It's just like, can I take your order? To me, it was a very memorable experience that I really cherished because I've never had that. A stranger comes up, walking by, provecho. And I thought it was beautiful. So that was a really beautiful experience.
I think it also talks about the acknowledgement of each other.
Yeah.
So it's like that validating of your lived experience, but it's also acknowledging que alguien más comiendo.
Yes.
And so,
I mean, that took me by complete shock. I've never seen it. I've never experienced it up until that moment. That was beautiful. I was able to go back to my mom's hometown, El Mogote Guerrero. And I have a lot of memories there because my grandma lived there. My mom's from there. So being able to walk La Laguna, it was just beautiful. I do gotta say, oh my God, it was a struggle to get there for me. I do not like heights at all. I struggle with heights. And going down those steep mountains and you see nothing but blackness and trees, it was scary. That was a challenge I had to face, but it was so worth it.
Was that walking or was that in the car?
No, it was in the car. I think walking I would have passed out. And then they made me sit in the front, so I was like telling my primo, you need to slow down. He's like, what? I'm driving fine. I was freaking out. So I said, Ma, this is the last time I'm coming to your town. But that was a lie because I would love to go back there. I feel like I didn't really get to experience so much of what Mexico had to offer because I did get sick. That sickness that they say, Montezuma, whatever.
Revenge.
Yeah, I struggled with that. That was bad for me. But, it didn't matter because at the end of the day, I was with my family. We were, whether it was playing video games in the house, we were all eating together. I did tell my tia, whenever I ever get a chance to go to Mexico, I want my chilaquiles. Like, I need you to make chilaquiles in the morning. Well, sure enough, I did get that. We got there, like, no, we're going to make her chilaquiles, so.
Es lo que quería, so we're going to get it.
Yeah, so that was really special for me. I didn't get to go out and do a lot of things as I wanted to, but I did got to be with my family. Another thing I like to share if I can, my goal coming into this trip, I wanted to see a lot of my family, but I know that I have family scattered all over Mexico. So when I got there, I talked to my brother, I talked to my mom, and I said, I would like to have a party to host the whole family. Can you guys help me with that? And they're like, yeah, we'll do it. My brother came through. We had familia from Celaya. Last minute, they drove. And to me, I hope I don't get emotional, but like I shared this story with you guys before. I had a lot of family that came through that saw me as a little girl and then never saw me again. They are mostly part of my dad's side of the family. So my grandma, who I lived with growing up, she was also like a second mother to me. Unfortunately, she passed away, and I never got to say goodbye to her. And despite all the drama within family, everybody came through. And, one of my cousins said, "You brought everybody back together." They always said I was my grandma's little girl. And, like, that meant a lot to me because I knew my grandma was someone special to me, but I never knew the amount that I meant to her because, I was a kid. You don't really pay attention to that. So being able to have that and enjoy my family and, dancing, eating real good, man. God, we were eating. Man, it was an amazing night, It was one of the best moments I've had, just reuniting with long family that I haven't seen so long. I wish I would have had more time to be there with them, but I think for me especially, it was more important the connection with my family than to be able to go out and experience it. Like, I would have loved that too, but I think I enjoy more the family aspect. I've been craving it so long to be able to be with my family, see so many tias and tios I was growing up with, to be able to have them and hug them physically is something that you just cannot pass on, and it's always very much cherished.
Thank you so much for sharing about the family connection, reunirlos, being with them, and also the memories too.
Yeah.
Of like, we were there when we were young and then coming back as older, thinking about like all those memories and all those connections too. And Irma also talked a little bit about that too. Mm-hmm. So the second part of the program kind of dealt with La UNAM. We had los profesores that had classes on history, culture, identity, and Spanish as well, language, with homework. Can you talk a little bit about what that second part of it was for yourself?
I think with the UNAM, the professors were amazing. They had a lot of patience.
They sure did.
I think that's one of the things that I was so worried about. Like, oh my God, my Spanish. Yes, I speak Spanish, pero writing Spanish, it's awful. It's
los
awful.
acentos.
Y los acentos. So I think that experience with them, it brought me back to kind of relearning those skills that I lost in the process, coming here and just losing all of that. But yeah, I mean, all their classes were amazing. I learned a lot about, Mexico and their culture, their history. Although I knew that at some point of my life, it was all gone. But, coming back and reconnecting with that and how they had us go through all these murals and talking about the history of Mexico, like I felt so connected. I know when they had us walk and they gave us a tour and we looked at all those humongous murals, it was just like, at least that's how I felt. I was transporting back into those moments, and I feel like I was, again, part of my own culture. And, the trips that we did, the places that we visited in Mexico, it was just amazing. Like, to be honest, I didn't want to come back. I just wanted to stay there. Each day that we visited different places, it was just amazing. We did a lot of walking. But, once again, they're used to that. So walking through El Zócalo was just amazing. Just seeing all that people and like just seeing El Zócalo en persona rather than on TV was just a very unique, incredible experience. And being there and physically stepping on that ground and just feeling the air. And it was just amazing. Yeah.
You mentioned walking through El Zócalo. One of the things we saw was different groups that were doing different activities in El Zócalo.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about how did it feel to see all the different communities, whether they be dancing or doing other activities?
Yeah, I remember one specifically. I think I was walking with Joanna and someone from the group. And we got stopped by this guy who was dancing, and he had this huge, ¿cómo se le llama?
Like the Aztec dress?
Yeah, and he was like, he was trying to read us our future, and he told me that I was a very anxious person, which, yes, in some way I am. But, just him, like, stopping us and reading us, and it was just, like, amazing. I'm like, that's a very unforgettable.
Is that like the Olympia thing?
I think so.
There was somebody else doing Olympia.
Yeah.
So there was,
Yeah, and it was him, right? But then seeing, all the other people, I think there was a protest too. I cannot recall exactly, but I know there was a group of people protesting. Just seeing that, you just felt like you were at home, even though there was people protesting and people stopping you to read you your future, how you are. It was just an amazing experience. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Smiley, what about for yourself? You have a sweatshirt on? That's La UNAM sweatshirt?
Yes, I got a rep. I mean, I've heard of UNAM, and I really fell in love with it. I enjoyed every aspect that the professores offered. It was a lot of information. Sometimes I'm just like, I don't even know what to take in, but
Yeah.
I do appreciate that not only did we got a classroom setting, but we also got to be out and then seeing the actual thing. One of the things for me that sticks out the most is the murals. As we walk, they tell us the story of each mural and what that mural represents. And one of the craziest things for me was how they painted those murals, how they did it in pieces. I really enjoyed that. That was, I think, for me, for my learning way is visual and being hands-on opposed to a classroom setting. So I really appreciated that. I didn't know how much art was important to our culture. I know that we do have a lot of fun colors and stuff like that, but I took a different point of view after every day we had a class and stuff like that. It was definitely very knowledgeable. I am thankful for the professores who were very patient with us, especially with me, I was always getting in trouble, but, they were always, you have a question, they were very patient to explain things to you. I think as we walked around and we experienced, we did get to see that, like when we were in the hotel in Reforma, at late at night when we walked through that park behind the hotel, you got all these groups dancing. That was beautiful because it's like 9 o'clock at night, 10, and everybody's out. There's so many activities going on. You got people skating, and it was just beautiful. I really love the culture that exists down there. You can walk to any group and go like, hey, what are you guys doing? And, we're just dancing, and you start vibing with people. So that was really, really exciting. I think also one thing that I enjoyed was, what's it called? Garibaldi? Is that where all the mariachis are?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, like for me, one thing that stuck out, my brother asked me, was like, you want to see mariachis run? And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, you want to see mariachis run? And I was like, okay. And sure enough, as we're driving to Garibaldi, you have a bunch of mariachis. Hey, we'll play you music and stuff like that. So they're trying to get you to pay them so they can play you. And we eventually did. We went and sat down on the table and my brother got me a mariachi band. He was like, no, I need like a group of 7, I think he said. And then come play. So, he let me choose some of the songs. And of course, I had to do the Mexico Lindo y Querido.
Oh, yes.
So, there was other songs, but, it's just like, I need that song to be played. So that was a really nice experience, that firsthand. So, yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing. And yeah, I think that's what I was thinking when I asked Irma about that, walking through the park behind the hotel.
Yeah.
That you had one group of even like different ages too.
Oh my God, yes, yeah. You had one group of music for like elderly people, one for the young, like you have bachata, salsa, everything. It's a whole mixture out there.
And like you said, it was just in the evening and they were just enjoying themselves out in the park.
Yeah, that was beautiful.
So that was really nice. And so after we did the whole program, then there was a whole process of coming back. You both referenced El Cuartito and that whole process of anxiety that comes up when you're returning. Can you talk about that process of coming back to the United States?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, and being finally in el dichoso cuartito, which looks nothing like a cuartito.
Yeah.
I would say. While we were sitting there, and I think we waited for quite some time, at least an hour before we were able to come out. And just hearing the names of those that were being called with their passport, and I'm like, okay, finally it will be me. I think that's where it hit. I was like, okay, I'm back in the States, but I need to make it past this cuartito so I can finally be able to say that I'm, back in the States. It did hit me very bad, to be honest. I know I was like sweating. I was very sweaty when we were sitting there, and I just felt anxious, not knowing if I was going to be giving my passport back. It was a moment that it was stressful, but I think it was also not as bad as what I had heard from others. Just seeing that people were getting their passports and it started to kick in, we're like, okay, it's fine. You just got to relax. Eventually, you're going to be back. And then that moment came. We were all back, getting our suitcases, and we were all together. Finally, that's when I was like, okay, I'm safe. I'm fine. I'll be okay. Made it back safe and sound. But it was a very stressful moment. At least that's how it felt it for me. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing. And then Smiley, I was trying to remember if you were one of the last people in the group.
Yeah, I was second to last.
Yeah, I think we were the last group, yeah.
Oh my God, it was, I felt comfortable. Having you guys with us really, brought calm to me. I felt confident. Up until you go in through that little door, and then, the lady asked me, wow, did you guys plan to all be here at the same time? And that kind of threw me off because she didn't talk to anybody. But she asked me that, and I said, actually, we're here through a school program. And she said, oh, okay. And then she just handed my passport, and I'm like, oh. And then I'm just there waiting, and they tell me wait with this group. Everybody's already in el cuartito. I think it was about 6 of us or 7 of us. Then they take us back there. And we're all sitting together, and I'm just like, okay, here's the waiting game now. And I got to sit there and see officers come out with a pack of passports and calling off people. And I was like, nope, not me. And I think you got called ahead of us. But at the end, it was Joanna and me just sitting there together. And I'm like, what's going to happen? Why did everybody get clear? And why haven't we got cleared? I was stressing. I was like, oh my God, this does not look good. I mean, you can even tell because everybody was out there. There's a picture with everybody minus Joanna and me. And it was like, yeah, we made it safe. No, you're still missing 2 people. But it felt great coming out. You guys have my suitcase. I was like, thank God. And once I walked out that door, I was like, I made it. We're back home. I wanted to kiss the floor, but it's probably dirty, so I didn't do that.
No.
But yeah, it was very stressful, but very worth it to go through. I would do it again.
Yes, definitely. I would too.
Yeah,
100%.
So thinking about this whole experience, we talked about the family, we talked about La UNAM, we talked about the returning. How do you feel like things have changed for you from going back to Mexico? And now, are there things that you've noticed different? I'm assuming we're still processing a lot of the experiences that happen, but have you noticed anything that's different after coming back in terms of yourself and your way of life?
I would say for me, the first few weeks after coming back, I cried a lot because I wanted to go back so bad. Although my husband, kids were here, I wanted to go back so bad. All I talked about was Mexico. I think I got my kids tired of me talking about Mexico. And I would talk a lot about, this is what I did. When we go back, we're going to go here, we're going to go there. I think I annoyed them, but I did a lot of crying, just, reflecting on how I had that opportunity to see my dad again and go back and see the house where I grew up, go back and, walk through El Tajito, which is the hometown where I grew up when I was in Mexico, as a kid. I did a lot of reflecting. I now feel even more connected to my roots and who I am as a person. I would do this again all over. I really cannot wait to go back and relive that again and see new places, live new experiences. Yeah, I feel like a new true Mexican woman.
Thank you for sharing that. Smiley, what about for yourself?
For me, I feel like, honestly, I still haven't fully processed the whole trip. Sometimes I try to go through the pictures because I want to post them, but I don't know. It was very emotional for me. There was a lot of tears shed. I think it's been harder for me to process it now that I'm here. I do want to be back there. My mom's been there for the past 6 months, and she's telling me of all the things she's doing, and I'm like, man, it's like, I wish I could be there. There was so many family events that happened, and I can't be there. So part of me is kind of still hurt from the process. I still haven't been, I want to go back. I want to be there again, and I want to be able to experience a lot more things. So I am super grateful for this opportunity because it was once in a lifetime that I had the chance to go back. I think for me, it helped me grow as a person. And I also, like, we take a lot of things for granted here. And so, like, that made me realize, like, no, you gotta take a step back and really look at the big picture, because we are very lucky. We are very blessed to be where we are, have a decent place to live. I'm sorry. My Mexican came out. But, it just really made me appreciate things more, look at life a little bit different. And, my goal is hopefully I can, in the future, just be able to go without worries. So, yeah, for me, it was a huge take. I'm grateful to my family who host me. I didn't have to worry about getting a hotel or anything, but just being able to, like, everything that happened, even after being with family, even with the group, we became a family. And that's beautiful, like, I will remember everyone that was part of that group, all the memories we have. Like, I carry those very deep with me, and I appreciated everybody who took part of it and really participated, because we had some people who were very shy and kept to themselves, and towards the end of it, they were opening up to us. It was beautiful. So this whole trip did make me just take a different view of life and, just be very grateful for what I have right now.
Thank you. And thank you both for trusting us also with the process. We know that as you all have reflected on it, it is an intense process. There's a lot of emotions that go into it. There's a lot of energy that goes into it too. So thank you both, as well as the rest of the participants, for entrusting us in being able to do the program. So as you reflect on other people, or what advice would you have for other people who might be interested in doing advanced parole, what would be your words of advice for them?
Go for it.
Exactly.
Do it. Don't question it. I mean, what's the worst that can happen? They say no, and you don't go and get your hopes crushed again. But don't let fear stop you, and definitely go. Enjoy every minute of it. Don't hold back.
I would agree with Smiley. I mean, we hear a lot about, this could happen. Yes, it could happen, right? There is that risk, but, go for it. Especially if you have that pathway to legalizing your status, that is a great option to do, advance parole, because it can give you the key to be able to do that one day. So if you have that option, why not, take the risk, do it, so that one day you can come back whenever you want. Yeah, just take the risk.
But be smart about it.
Be smart about it, yes.
And that's what I was going to say before you mentioned a resource on Facebook, Dreamers Together. And it's Dreamers with the number 2 and then Together.
Yes.
And so thinking about like how to use resources, the MISOL program is an amazing program. And so thinking about what other things people can do to get ready for that process. And just a reminder, you could do AP for humanitarian reasons, for work reasons, or for employment. And so thinking about what might be some of those opportunities that people can use to be able to travel back to their home country or other countries as well.
Yeah.
So as we think about kind of wrapping up the program, are there any final thoughts that you have or things that you want to share that you haven't had a chance to share yet?
One thing. I want to thank Lalo, Jasenia, and Erica for putting all the effort. We don't know, but we could tell you guys were stressed out, and then having to deal with us. Thank you so much for, having this vision and going against all odds. We greatly appreciate it. And also, I do recommend, if you do guys continue to do these programs, be aware of, people do say it is dangerous. It's not so bad, but there is those moments. We had a scare close to the hotel, so always be aware of your surroundings. Stay with your group. Don't be alone. Just kidding. But when you're with the...
Be aware of your surroundings, I think, captures that, because it's the same kind of security measures that you would take anywhere else, right? Like, be aware of who's around you, if anybody's looking at you. If you're traveling at night, try not to do it. I think that traveling by yourself, like Irma was talking about, is different, because that was traveling from one town to another. And oftentimes there's the different bus companies that you could use. But also be mindful of then what are the different ways that you could stay safe, like you would in the U.S. too.
Yeah.
I agree with Smiley. I do want to say one thing that I didn't mention when I said that I travel with myself. So when I came back from Coahuila, I landed in Mexico City. From there, I was going to travel to San Miguel de Allende. I had bought up a bus ticket, but the bus did not leave till 5 p.m. So I canceled the bus ticket. I was like, don't want to be on the road at 5 p.m. late at night, right? But this is what I did. I took an Uber from I took an Uber from Mexico City, the airport, and the Uber drove me all the way to San Miguel de Allende. So it was like almost a 4-hour drive.
Wow.
I know. It was risky, but I took the risk. But I think in some way I felt safe. It was an Uber driver, right? We had a really good conversation on the way to San Miguel de Allende. But yeah, I mean, I guess my advice to others would be take the risk. It's once in a lifetime opportunity. And if you could take advantage of that, do it. I'm also very thankful to you, Lalo, and Yesenia, and Erika for all the effort and work that you guys put in this. Like Smiley said, I'm pretty sure you guys were very stressed out. But I'm very just thankful, thankful and grateful for this opportunity and for you guys to, going against all the odds and taking this initiative about creating this opportunity for others who could benefit from it. Very thankful.
Thank you, and thank you both. And I just wanted to clarify, when you say that we were stressed, oftentimes it's because of that worrying and wanting to make sure that the group has what they need, as well as making sure that we're planning ahead and trying to get everything ready. So I think part of that is just, as you both mentioned, that all the things that we have to take into consideration for the program. And as an organization, MISOL used to be under the Center for Dreamers. Unfortunately, when that closed, we were finding a new location for MISOL. And I am happy to announce that MISOL is now a non-for-profit organization.
Yeah.
Yes.
So now we're working on the next couple of programs that are going to be available. Our next cohort has been selected and is going to go to Oaxaca. So they're going to get a different experience than what you all went through with La UNAM. But we still have a different focus. We have a different plan for them. And eventually we're hoping to expand that further and have other programs in the future as well.
Yeah.
And so again, with that, I feel like, as you both mentioned, is like, how do we continue this momentum going? How do we continue this work going? And how do we continue learning from each of the cohorts to make sure that we make this opportunity available for more people? Mm-hmm. And ideally, we would love to make it available to all of Wisconsin, but due to capacity, oftentimes we don't have that capacity. But I think thinking about what are other ways that people can take advantage of Advance Parole is always an important conversation.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So with that, I would like to thank both of you for being on the show and contributing to that podcast and sharing your own stories, sharing your interactions with their families, sharing about working with La UNAM, as well as going back to Mexico and coming back and all that experience and all those emotions that go into it. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us here. Yes. Yeah. If I can add just one thing, Lalo, I think, the work that you do with this podcast is important that it gets out there to other people who have no clue about how we have to go through this process as, dreamers, as DACA recipients, to be able to reconnect with our roots and our families. So thank you for that. The word needs to get out, and something needs to happen for us, to have a positive change down the road.
And this is a great platform.
Yes.
Thank you. And that makes me think about, how do we continue sharing those stories or sharing the learning that happens from those stories too? Mm-hmm. And I think that was one of the reasons why I started the podcast, was how do we have the public-facing conversations that are going to be available for the whole public as well? And the impact happened with our community. And so then how do we share those learnings that can be part of it too? So I appreciate the shout out for the podcast as well on the platform.
Yeah. Of course. Thank you.
So for our audience, thank you so much for listening. This has been the second part of our Advance Parole with MISOL. And so stay tuned for the next episodes that will be coming. And we're excited to share those with you. So thank you so much for listening, and hope you have a great day. Thank you for listening to another episode of the Educators and Immigration Podcast. You can find out more information about us at www.educatorsand'immigration.com. Please remember to like, subscribe, and share our podcast with your family, friends, and colleagues. You could also leave us a review and rate us on Apple Podcasts as well as Spotify. Thank you again, and I hope you have a great day.